Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. If you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page, and please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI Podcast episode, I talk with Carrie-Lynn Hotson about why we need to leave the ego at the door. Carrie-Lynn Hotson, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Hi, great to be here.
It is great to be with you. It's been a bit of a challenge to get together. We've been juggling schedules and snowstorms. You're joining us from snowy Ontario area. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah, and we both have experienced a whole lot of severe weather recently, which has made it a little bit challenging, but it's great to be with you. Today, we're going to be talking about why we need to leave ego at the door when we are leading and when we're working with our teams and our organizations. And, not having an ego when you're a leader is not something that comes naturally to a lot of people. So we're going to be exploring this together, and I'm excited for the conversation. As we get started, I wanted to share Carrie-Lynn's bio with everybody. Carrie-Lynn Hotson has utilized her 25 years of experience as an HR professional, senior manager, leader, facilitator, and mediator to create a business guidebook for leaders called Knowing Who You Lead. She reveals important lessons, tools, and strategies that leaders and teams can use to understand why issues are occurring, engage and retain great members so they can have great teams. She also shares how she can help you and your team to pivot and inspire organizational growth. Carrie-Lynn, it's a pleasure to have you. Anything else you would like to share with me or my audience by way of your background or personal context before we dive on into the conversation?
No, just that the business is really giving me the opportunity to work with a lot of fantastic leaders and teams. And it's exciting to see that leaders are now willing to be vulnerable and actually look at who they are and how they lead and how it's actually impacting the people that they're trying to lead. So yeah, I've learned a lot of great things, and I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation today.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's start with ego. What is ego? Why does it matter? Why is it a problem when we're trying to lead effectively in teams and really empower people and lead to organizational growth and success?
Well, if we want to borrow from Brené Brown, she would tell us that ego is that armor, right? And so it's the willingness to say, okay, I'll listen. Number one, I want to hear how I impact other people. And then not getting stuck in defensive mode and thinking, yeah, but I intended this, but I was trying to do this. And I get it. I'm sure you had great intentions, but ego is really about, can we put your intentions aside and learn about how it's impacting the people you're trying to lead? Maybe you're not meeting their needs. Maybe the way that you're doing it is actually making them feel less competent, less confident. And so really, that's what you need to hear, and then pivot, adjust, and figure out how to do that.
Yeah, and that's hard for people to have that level of self-awareness and self-reflection, especially for leaders who are, far along in their career. They've had a lot of experiences. They've had a lot of successes. They've been elevated. They've been promoted. They're there for a reason. They're smart. They're capable. They're talented. They probably been successful in the past with teams, but the problem is, just because you've had success in the past doesn't mean you're going to necessarily have the same successes in the future, especially when you're thrown into a new context with a new team, because every situation is unique and different. And you have to be, have the intellectual humility to approach each of those situations anew, and have the humility to be able to check your ego at the door, and to practice that critical self-reflection, so you can recognize if what you're doing isn't working, it isn't resonating. And rather than just blaming your people, which is commonly what happens, take stock and step back and realize, hey, maybe something I'm doing that might have been great and might have worked in a previous context isn't working so well now. Maybe that's not just my people. Maybe that's me. Maybe I need to be doing something differently. When I work with a leader who's like that, it's a whole different ballgame than when I'm working with a leader who comes in guns a-blazing. They are very smart. They know it. And they kind of just expect people to fall in line because they know best. That's a very different game. It's a very different kind of atmosphere to work in. And frankly, most people don't like working in that kind of an atmosphere, right?
Well, and there's your reality, right? And this is why a lot of teams and leaders are now coming to me. They're recognizing that, to be honest, we haven't really put a lot of thought to this. We haven't put a lot of thought to how we're leading or how it's impacting other people. But the reality is, it's all about employee retention now. And so we realize that if I don't do some work on this and put my ego at the door and listen and learn, people are not staying. And so very much it's about, how do we change things? How do we change our approach to help employees feel? And I have an acronym, I say it's VISH. So this is what employees want in 2023. They want VISH. They want to feel that they're valued. I want to know that I'm inspired to try, to be innovative, all these things you have in your values, right? I love that. I'll ask companies, what's your company values? Oh, we're innovative and we're collaborative and we're respectful and we're trustworthy and inclusive. And then I say, okay, so how do you do that? How do you prove that to me as the new employee? What do you do in your leadership that exudes that? It's never to shame. It's never to blame. It's just to teach. And I love having those aha moments with leaders. And then, so the S is for support. I want to feel supported, which means you have to get to know who I am and figure out what my needs are. And then I want to feel heard. Please don't tell me you're a collaborative and inclusive organization. And then, like you said, you just gave us the example of the leader who dictates or is authoritative and tells you and expects you to lead. Well, that's odd, because that's not the company I thought that I was coming into. That's not what I read about on your website. That's not who you profess to be. So I don't really want to stay. And so that really has sparked those conversations about, I wonder who we are and how we want to lead and what do we need to change.
Yeah. And it's not just about people leaving either. I mean, that's a problem. Yeah. I was reading a report a week or two ago. I think it was from the U.S. Department of Labor. It was something like 1/3 of the U.S. labor force changed jobs last year.
Yeah.
Some 50, 60 million people changed jobs last year. That is a huge amount of transition for any economy. And there always should be some level of transition. That's healthy, but that's a really high level. And so organizations are struggling to keep their good people, but it's not even just about whether or not people choose to leave, but it's withdrawal cognitions and quiet quitting. It's people, it's the effort people are putting into their work. It's the commitment and loyalty that employees have to their teams and to their employer. Someone may decide, well, I like the company overall. I like the job overall, but I'm not being treated well. I kind of have a jerk boss. They're not really fully utilizing me, and they're not really paying me as much as I think I'm worth. But I'll stay. I'm just going to recalibrate my effort. I'm just going to recalibrate what I do so that I have time to do a side hustle or to do something else that is going to be meaningful to me. And a lot of people are doing that. They're staying at their current job, but they're starting that side hustle. They're doing something else to find that passion and to be able to be enlivened in the work that they do. I mean, that's a tragedy for organizations. It's a huge missed opportunity. And a lot of it comes down to just how are they treated? A company can be pretty toxic and sick in its culture, but if you have a really great boss in your team, you can be pretty insulated from it. You could have an overall kind of crummy organization, but your team could be awesome. And guess what? That leader and that team, they're going to accomplish some good stuff, and you're not going to have a huge retention problem in your team if you create that environment within your sphere of influence. But the opposite's also true. It could be an amazing organization, the type of organization everyone would want to go work for, but your particular team sucks. It's a toxic environment. Nobody wants to be there or working with you, and you can't keep people, and you can't attract good people. And so both are true. Both can happen. And it just is a reminder that leaders, line leaders, supervisors all the way up through the various levels of managerial leadership roles in organizations, they play a really huge part in creating that environment that is going to either set people up for success or set them up for failure. And that's going to influence things like quiet quitting, things like turnover, intentions, and all that sort of stuff that's going to cost the company in major ways. And so much of it just comes back to the ego. Because I don't expect my boss, whatever organization I'm working with, I don't expect my boss to be perfect. I don't expect him or her to always make decisions that are in line with what I think. I don't expect them to have a perfect strategic vision that always aligns directly with what's happening in the world. Like, things happen and things aren't perfect and things are messy and people get it. They don't expect that. What I do expect, though, is I expect a boss, a leader who's humble enough to seek input openly, be transparent and open in your communication, seek input from other people, openly share your decision-making process and why you're coming to the decisions that you're making, share your why, all those sorts of things. And then if a problem happens, if a misstep occurs, to own it and say, that didn't work. That didn't work the way I had intended. And to own it, rather than what often happens when people have a big ego, they just can't. They can't take responsibility for it. They can't own it. And they start to blame shift, and they start to look for other people to pin it on, scapegoats or whatever, so that they can maintain this facade of, their power and their control and their expertise. And people aren't stupid. People on your team know when you're gaslighting them. People on your team know when you're throwing them under the bus. And that's going to erode trust. It's going to erode your ability to be effective as a leader moving forward. Yet that is the problem that we see over and over and over again in so many organizations and so many teams. Even when people listening to this say, yeah, that's terrible, we don't want to do that, yet we fall into the trap over and over and over again.
So that's a great segue to a lot of the work that I'm doing. I do a lot of one-on-one leadership coaching. And I think sometimes it comes down to assumptions and presumptions. People assume you have a really big ego. People assume you don't want to listen. And when I'm actually working with these leaders, I can pick up very quickly on, no, you know what? They do want to hear you. They just don't have the skills. They don't know how. I think I'm being collaborative. I asked them what they thought. They didn't tell me anything. So then I need to take them back and say, okay, I wonder what that looks like for your employee. And sometimes we'll play it out. I'll do little scenarios with them. Okay, picture your employee walking in and they look at you and you give them this, kind of begrudging look that you're bothering them. And well, they're not going to share. Well, really? But I told them to share. Yeah, no, because your body language said something else. Or in the meeting, you're asking for input, but you asked for 2 seconds and then you spoke for 45. So were you really collaborating? And we can have a lot of fun. I can get beyond those egos. We can crack that pretty quick, because the leaders themselves, all they want to do is feel valued, inspired, supported, and heard. It's the same thing. So when I sit with you as a coach and I hear you and I'm here to support you, and then we start to see where you get value because people are kind of excited about it, guess what? Now you're inspired to try something else. Oh, I'm going to try that with this employee this week. And then they go and try it. And then we talk it through. I'm really happy to see organizations are finally saying, we can't keep telling people what we expect them to do and then give them no tools to do it with. It's not fair. Here, read this book and become a better leader. How? I don't know what to do. When I try it with real humans, it didn't work. That's because we got to figure out who you are and then who they are and then who you are as a team and work through all those processes. That's how this really works. And then we'll inspire organizational change and retain employees and all that stuff. But we got to do this first. But it's fun, and I'm happy to see people are finally trying it.
Yeah. And you really do make a good point. It has less to do with the intentions, and it's just the perceived reality. And it doesn't have to be the actual reality. It's that perceptions do rule, though, when we're talking about trust, when we're talking about communication and mutual accountability and those sorts of things. It really does matter. I'm a believer that most people are well-intentioned individuals. Most people don't wake up in the morning, thinking, how am I going to, exploit my workers today?
Right.
That's not something that I think runs through most people's minds. They want to do right by their people. They want to be successful, etc. But they lack the tools. They don't have necessarily the competencies to be successful in this particular context they find themselves in. Sometimes they lack the self-awareness to know, what they're doing and how that's impacting the people they're interacting with. There are some people that are truly toxic that, and we all have examples 100%. Of those people. Yeah, there are those people, but most people I think are really trying, but they don't know how. And that's where, a lot of the work that you do comes in, and there's lots of people that do this work to help people be more successful. I'm thinking of one particular leader. Again, I think intentions were really good, but my goodness, kind of the lack of emotional intelligence and just being able to read the room and the one experience that I'm thinking of, is kind of this executive meeting, all the leaders, all the senior leaders in this room, and there's this really challenging issue that they're facing, and the meeting's called to be able to kind of tackle this and work through it. Now, a couple things are happening as this meeting starts. One, this isn't starting fresh. Like, there's a track record. So there's a history. All these people have been working together for a long time. So everything that has happened up to this point is informing what all these leaders' perceptions are of this current situation. So that's one. Two, you get into the situation itself and you have a well-intentioned leader who wants the input of their people. But, in this situation, he sits down and he frames up the problem and he says, I really need to get your input. I really want to know, what you think is the best thing to do. But let me start by telling you what I think the best thing to do is.
Exactly. 100%.
And then he commences to take 20 minutes to explain it. And then immediately he asks for input, and a couple brave souls speak up and they say, well, I'm concerned about this. And he immediately shuts them down, immediately. Well, and then after that, of course, the whole room is silent. Nobody's going to speak up. Nobody's going to say anything. And the intention, while a good intention, was not implemented. It was not facilitated well. And it completely shut everything down. And ultimately, it was not a great decision, not a great approach, didn't have the buy-in of the people, like all those other problems that come from it, all because this person just didn't know how to do it, despite whatever their good intentions were. And it comes back to what you were describing earlier. And those are the types of things that if we're self-aware enough, then we can get coaching. We can go through training and educational programs. We can get mentors and advisors, and we can practice things, and we can self-reflect and journal and do different things to help us improve over time. It is possible. I do believe that everyone has potential to improve their leadership capabilities, but it's not easy, especially if you're deprogramming a whole lifetime worth of, toxic or unhealthy or just, unhelpful and unsuccessful kinds of behaviors.
So as a mediator and coming from HR, so one of the things I'm really doing to encourage organizations, so your scenario, perfect scenario, right? So we have this meeting, it didn't go well. That leader doesn't really know why it didn't land well. They might be conscious of it, nobody talked, but they don't know why. So then what we do as an organization is we say, so John, I just want to give you a little bit of feedback. People are finding that potentially you're not very approachable or that you're not open to ideas. But I'm not going to give you for instance, I'm not going to give you the time and date that it happened because I'm worried, like, I don't want you retaliating. But the problem is you have no idea what I'm talking about because you didn't have that awareness that in that particular meeting, it didn't work. So you have no way to frame it and you don't have any way to fix it. So the best thing organizations can do is that when we have that meeting and that goes that way, or we know that this is becoming a pattern, for example, have that person then work with somebody who can help them develop the strategies, the awareness, but give them the real example so we know what we're working with. And then we can actually move from there and they can go back and give feedback. They can try new scenarios in the next meeting and ask John, was that better? So I tried this instead. Did that work? And you'd be like, well, yeah, you know what? I love that you asked an open-ended question. It was good. But then I saw like halfway through the meeting, you started default. You kind of got frustrated with what people were saying. And we went back to the old pattern of you telling us, oh, I didn't, you're right. I didn't realize that I did that. Okay, can we have a signal? Like, can you let me know when I start to do that in a meeting? But do you see how much healthier this is, right? Because now John is inspired. He feels like, he's being supported and heard. And I want to help this leader. I want him to grow. I appreciate the fact that he actually wants to grow. And we're giving them the tools to actually use. Because if we don't, you said it, the organizational culture, it just historically, it goes on and on and on. Now we come into the meeting. I've already got this figured out. I know exactly what's going to happen. That guy's going to talk for 25 minutes. Nobody's going to say anything. Like, why am I even here? I'm on my phone. I'm not invested. I don't feel inspired. I know I'm not going to be heard. So I'm not even going to talk up because I did in the last 3 meetings and got shut down. Guess what? No organizational growth, no innovation, no collaboration. So not only are we not fulfilling our values, we're not growing as an organization. So I think there's a lot we can do. And I think we need to do it individually. I like starting like with the leadership training. Let's, introduce the concepts and the people that only need a little bit. And then who needs a little bit more? Maybe because you're brand new and you have no idea how to do this, or you've been doing this for 20 years and you're frustrated, you're tired, you're maxed out, it's not working. Or maybe it's the employee that you've been struggling with that you just cannot figure out what to do. Like, they're great at their job, but they can't lead anybody. Nobody wants to work for them. They all want to transfer off their team. Okay, no problem. Let's figure out why. And then let's figure out how to help them. I think there's tons that can be done. We just have to invest in people.
Yeah. And you talked about it earlier, but
yeah,
investing in people and recognizing you need to support people, especially at the lower levels, the lower rungs of leadership, that transition from subject matter expertise in whatever job function you're doing to now leading people who have the subject matter expertise. That's a hard transition for a lot of people. Frankly, most people aren't prepared for that transition. They have no experience in leading teams. And so if you're promoting someone because they were super successful in a previous role, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be successful in this new role. You have to support them. You have to invest in them. You have to help them to develop those new competencies for this new role. And if you don't, you're setting them up for failure. You're setting the team up for failure, and you're thwarting the potential growth of the organization. Exactly. And so yeah, let's recommit to focusing on investing in our people, and helping them to recognize, part of it is, again, it comes back to just societal norms and what people think a leader looks like. And so now they're behaving, they don't know how to lead. They've never been in a leadership position before. They just know how they've been led before. And so they're trying to mimic what they've seen other people do or what they've seen in movies or whatever. And a lot of times those things aren't particularly healthy, and they don't know any different. Like, they don't have, you can't draw from an empty well. Like, you just don't even know. And so you just perpetuate a lot of things that aren't going to be helpful. And one of those kind of leader stereotypes that often gets perpetuated in media, or that we've seen in kind of the old school approaches to leadership, is this ego-driven, like, set yourself, it's this faux confidence, like, you need to be the person that's in control. You need to show people that you know what you're doing. You have, and just all of that. And frankly, a lot of people do that not because they're super ego-driven people, but because they think that's what they're supposed to do to be successful. And so we need to help people recognize that that's not the best way. It's actually probably going to erode their ability to be successful. And there's another way, and you have permission to go the other direction.
Yeah. And to ask for help. That's the other piece, right? It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, I'm really good at this job, but this is tough. I'm struggling with this. And I'd rather as an organization have you ask for help and we offer it than have you step down or frustrate that team or go into that authoritative leadership style because you don't know what else to do. So, but as an organizational culture, we have to make it okay to ask for help. We have to not judge when people want help. And then we have to offer it on a very proactive level.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Carrie-Lynn, this has just been a really fun conversation. I know at the time I'm going to need to let you go here in a few minutes, but before we wrap things up for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, so my business is called Inspiring Organizational Growth. And the book that I've written is called Knowing Who You Lead. And the book is designed to help you leaders give you those step-by-step instructions, those strategies. Here, try this, go back and do this, try this feedback. It's got a workbook that goes with it because I really believe in trying to inspire leaders and give them tools. That's what you need. And so, yeah, I would love for you to reach out. I think all leaders have potential. I think it's fantastic that people want to aspire to that level. So just ask for the help if you need it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carrie-Lynn. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Carrie-Lynn can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page. And please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.